Majestic Pikes Peak. Nestled in its valley to the east is the city of Colorado Springs. Perched along its western slope is Teller County.
It's a small county in comparison to the rest of the counties in Colorado. It's a very, very tight rural community primarily.
There are a few of us that live up there year-round, and there's a whole bunch more that have vacation homes.
On this crisp fall morning, Teller County Undersheriff Dick Geisen is headed into work when his radio crackles to life.
This is dispatch to K-19. This is dispatch to K-19. Can you hear me?
Geisen realizes the code name belongs to one of his deputies.
K-19, please respond.
Dispatch, this is Sheriff Geisen. What's going on?
We're having trouble reaching K-19, Deputy Holloway.
There was a fire scene, and there was some suspicion that it might be a suspicious fire. A deputy was stationed there to guard the scene overnight in the event that it was anything other than a normal fire.
We haven't heard from him since 6 a.m.
Normally, when we leave a deputy, they check in hourly, but he had not done so in the last hours.
Copy that. I'm not that far away. I'll swing by and check on him. Over.
So I drove out to the scene. I saw his car parked there. Found him situated in the seat, kind of leaned over. It could have been possible that he'd dozed off.
Hey, Deputy. Holloway.
He calls out, is sort of puzzled about why he's not responding.
Brent. Brent.
Once he gets to the car, he realizes why.
No way you can prepare yourself to walk up on something like that. It was a grisly scene. I checked whether he was alive or not. And it was obvious that he wasn't.
Dispatch. I've got an officer down. K-19 is down. Repeat, K-19 is deceased.
I'd seen death many times as a detective and all, but you don't figure walking up on one of your own deputies and finding him in like that.
We're gonna need some serious help up here. Dispatch, get in touch with El Paso County.
Copy that.
Meanwhile, in Colorado Springs, at the El Paso County DA's office, Chief Investigator Larry Martin is just starting his day.
Martin?
It was early Monday morning. I received a telephone call from the dispatcher.
We have an officer-related shooting.
Here?
No, Teller County. The undersheriff at the scene is requesting your help.
Okay, what's the location?
Teller County has a small sheriff's department, so when a major crime would occur, they would typically call the district attorney's investigative staff for assistance.
Okay, thanks. I'm on my way.
Martin is extremely experienced with enormously complicated cases, including officer-involved shootings. They couldn't have picked a better man.
Hey, thanks for coming, Larry.
Yeah. What exactly happened?
It's a deputy of ours, a young man named Holloway. He appears to have a gunshot wound to the head.
Deputy Brent Holloway was about a 2-year veteran of the department. Law enforcement was to be his lifelong career. And he was one of the very nicest and best officers that we had on our department at that time.
Brent was a young officer, just loved his job, loved law enforcement. His wife was a nurse. He was happy with what he was doing.
Any idea what he was doing out here?
Yeah, some cabin burned last night.
This fire occurred at 1 o'clock in the morning. A resident in the area smelled smoke, saw a glow in the dark, and summoned the Teller County Fire Department. They thought it was suspicious. They placed Holloway at the scene to protect the potential evidence until they could return at first light.
Did he shoot himself? Is it possible? Accidental or otherwise?
To be honest, we really don't see a whole lot of that around here.
There's not a lot of violent crime in Teller County, so it was suspected that maybe he had committed suicide.
Martin and Geisen turn to the scene itself for answers.
What do you think?
It's awful large to be a handgun.
The wound looked like it had been made by a large caliber weapon.
His service pistol's not in his holster.
No, I don't see it beside him either.
There's only one conclusion to be drawn: murder.
See, he must have been shot through the window this way.
They also discover cigarettes in the ashtray. He is smoking and has the window down for the smoke to leave the vehicle.
It was obvious to me that Deputy Holloway never knew that the assailant had snuck up on him.
The shooter most likely fired into the officer's face from very close range. What is the possible motive here? Right now, they have no way of knowing.
I realized that we need to get a lab team up here to investigate the scene. Teller County did not have their own lab because of the size of their department.
Hey, Larry.
Larry and I have known each other for 40 years. For him to be calling me that early in the morning is extremely odd.
What's going on? Is everything okay?
Receiving the news of an officer killed in the line of duty is a punch in the stomach. It's startling. It's one of us.
Maybe you can send some of your guys out here. That'd be great. We just don't have the resources to do what we need to do.
My immediate statement to Larry was, whatever you need, I will provide.
Lieutenant Kent, dispatch.
As Kenda orders his forensics team to the scene in Teller County, word of Deputy Holloway's death makes its way to other law enforcement agencies in the area.
We had a lot of local support from the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, Colorado Springs Police Department, and support from all the federal agencies. Everyone was there.
When the police officer has been killed in the line of duty, they will respond by whatever means is necessary to include their entire agency if required. We protect our own.
Around 9:15, Kenda's team arrives at the crime scene. As they begin processing Deputy Holloway's cruiser, Larry Martin devises a plan to track down the shooter.
All right, folks, we're looking for anything unusual. We believe the son of a bitch is still in the area, so we want to use extreme caution because he's probably armed as well.
We got a very large area to be concerned with here. So I need to make sure that the teams are working together to help search all these cabins and even search the woods to see if maybe a suspect is hiding out somewhere.
Thank you so much for being here.
Over the next several hours, the officers canvass the area.
This is a remote mountain covered in pine trees and underbrush. It is rough. It is very, very rural. And there are any number of places where someone could easily conceal themselves in these woods.
They wanted every home cleared and every vehicle looked into. Any place that the suspect could be hiding, he wanted searched.
Unfortunately, the search yields no evidence related to the shooting. But Larry Martin has a nagging feeling.
More and more as this investigation goes on, I'm of the opinion that this fire scene and the death of Brett Holloway are connected somehow.
Is it in fact an arson? Arsonists often like to admire their work. Perhaps he did return, and he was afraid that Deputy Holloway might have seen him.
So I called my arson investigator, Lynn Chance.
When I got there wasn't much to see. In the business, we call it a black hole. The top floor had completely burned and collapsed into the lower floor of the cabin. Based upon my preliminary scene investigation, we couldn't find anything that was obviously an accident.
One of the major concerns of arson investigators is that the owner has ignited the property to recover the insurance value. Is this an insurance fraud case? Is it possible that the homeowners decide it's necessary to kill the officer to prevent the discovery of that? When the homeowner arrived on the scene, he was very angry.
No.
What's going on?
This was our vacation home. We're sunk.
So how long do you own this place?
But as they talk to him, they discover there is no insurance policy on this property, and they are able to confirm that. That eliminates any possibility of fraud.
Though the cabin's owner has been eliminated as a suspect, investigators soon get wind of another person of interest.
One of my investigators, Mark Kors, came to me.
Sir, so we came across something kind of interesting.
He had been interviewing some of the volunteer firemen. He learned that Officer Holloway had some words with one of the firemen by the name of Walt Mercer.
He says they became enemies over some incident that occurred at a fire.
Well, is that enough to kill somebody? I don't know.
Mercer was actually out here last night fighting the fire.
Walt Mercer knew that Deputy Holloway was dispatched to guard that scene that night.
Is it possible that after everyone left, Mercer returned and took his revenge on his enemy? Feuds have a tendency to simmer until they explode into violence. We are investigating the Teller County Sheriff's deputy shot to death while guarding the scene of an arson fire.
Federal investigators have been digging for clues at this cabin in Teller County. It burned down early Monday morning.
Martin is in charge of this investigation. He has finally determined there's a possibility of a suspect and a volunteer fireman named Walt Mercer.
Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming in today to speak with us.
Had him come in for an interview about the argument he had with Brett Holloway.
Could you tell me exactly what the beef you had with Deputy Holloway was all about?
Are you talking about the emergency thing? That was nothing.
Walt Mercer told us that it had to do with calling a Flight for Life helicopter in on a call and whether that call should have been made or not.
I mean, things got a little bit heated, but that's it.
Mercer says they had gotten past that. It was just an argument that was eventually resolved.
Our disagreement about the helicopter was a one-time thing. We got over it. We were just joking together last night. When I found out this morning that Brent was dead, I still can't believe it.
Mercer reports that after the fire, he went home and went to bed and never returned to the scene.
Walt Mercer was very cooperative, but you still want to verify what he's telling you now. How do we do that? Well, let's talk to Deputy Holloway's wife. She wouldn't know if he had any problems with Walt Mercer.
But before Martin and Under Sheriff Geisen can interview Brent Holloway's wife, they have some gut-wrenching business to attend to.
Death notifications are extremely difficult in any situation. They are somehow infinitely worse when it's a fallen comrade.
No.
Kelly.
Please tell me he's okay.
Brent was shot last night, didn't he? He didn't make it.
The loss, of course, was very, very deep to me. We were just so bonded together. I just thought that we would always be married. We would always be a couple. It's like a part of you is torn out.
This was a tough case because we all knew Brent. The day before Brent was murdered, he had been in our office talking about the cruise that him and his wife were getting ready to go on. And he was really happy. And then it's gone.
Kelly, I'm Larry Martin from the DA's office in El Paso County. We're here helping on this case because we really want to do what's right by your husband.
They were very apologetic and said, I hate to do this to you, but we still have to ask questions of you.
Can you think of anybody that would harm Brent?
No. I mean, he got along with pretty much everyone.
What about Walt Mercer? We heard they had a fight about something.
No, Walt, no way. I mean, they had a few work disagreements once or twice, but they were very good friends.
Walt Mercer was a great friend of ours. Him and his wife lived maybe 2 miles down the road from us.
I know Walt. He would never hurt my husband.
he believes there's absolutely no way Mercer could be involved in this. So Martin and his investigators now believe that Mercer is no longer a suspect in this event.
If you can think of anything, just give me a shout.
That was one of the hardest times of my life. That not knowing who would have done this.
It is a rare thing to have a victim as innocent and as well thought of as Brent Holloway. At least at this point, the likelihood is that his death is connected to this fire and not through some personal issue involving Holloway's past.
After speaking with Kelly Holloway, investigator Martin decides to expand the perimeters of the manhunt. Later that day, that move appears to pay off.
Hey, what's up? Just talked to a team member, says they probably got some good information.
The investigators tell Martin that they've contacted a resident who reported to them a car had been abandoned a short distance from the fire scene.
What about a driver? But she said as she drove by, she saw a white male that she didn't know get out of the car and run into the wood line.
Then come back?
Apparently not. The car's still sitting right where he parked it.
Let's go check it out.
All right, follow me.
First thing I observed was that it's parked in a very strange area. There's no houses nearby, no cabins nearby. It was totally out of place.
You run the plates?
Yes, sir, I did.
And the license plate comes back that it's registered to a Matthew Sherwood, who lives in Colorado Springs.
Matter of fact, it did come back as being reported stolen.
Really?
Once we found out that this car had been reported stolen to the Colorado Springs Police Department, we reached out for assistance.
Yeah, Larry? I've got an abandoned vehicle out here. It's registered to Matthew Sherwood in Colorado Springs. I was hoping you'd send one of your guys out there to investigate. Matthew Sherwood.
Now this becomes a significant find. You have discovered a vehicle several hundred yards from an arson fire and a dead policeman. It's extremely likely that the person operating this vehicle is responsible for the fire and the murder as well.
Absolutely, we'll get right on it.
All right, perfect, thank you.
This guy needs to be found immediately. We have had the murder of an officer in Teller County. Now, investigators have discovered a stolen car in close proximity to the crime scene.
Kenda to Stevens.
Go for Stevens.
I need you to locate a Matthew Sherwood.
He recently reported his car stolen, and we have reason to believe that car was involved with the shooting of the deputy out in Teller County.
10-4, sir, I'm on it.
It only makes sense that our officers talk to the owner of the car. He's in Colorado Springs.
As Kenda and his team track down Matthew Sherwood, Martin's team begins searching the area where his car was discovered.
Hey, Wilson. Look at this. Better get Martin.
Investigators reported back to me that, yes, they had found something, something very important.
What you got?
Check it out here.
They find 3 different mason jars containing what seems to be gasoline with a cloth wick pushed through the lid of each container.
Molotov cocktails.
Basically, it's a homemade firebomb.
Well, at least we know what started the cabin fire.
We're now fairly certain that the stolen car we have found was driven by the person who started the fire. Is it also possible they were the person that shot Deputy Holloway? My gut tells me yes, and I also believe that he's still in the area, on foot, and can be found.
This guy's got to be out here somewhere.
When you have a killer on the loose that has killed a police officer, he is probably the most dangerous predator that there is. He will not hesitate to kill anybody that gets in his way. So you don't leave any rock unturned.
Back in Colorado Springs, Lieutenant Kenda's team makes contact with Matthew Sherwood, the owner of the abandoned car.
Just want to ask you questions about your stolen car.
Certainly. So exactly how long has your car been missing?
About 2 weeks.
Matthew explains that while he filed a cursory report on his stolen car approximately 12 days earlier, he had omitted the bizarre sequence of events that preceded it.
He goes to bed one night around midnight, gets up at 7, and he goes to reach for his keys, and they're not there. He looks out the window and notices that his car isn't there either.
Adam?
He's somewhat dumbfounded by this.
Adam? Adam?
He's going to question his roommate and realizes that he's disappeared as well. The conclusion is obvious that the roommate picked up the keys and took this car.
I haven't seen my car or my roommate since.
Okay, what can you tell us about this guy?
Matthew explains that his roommate is Adam Cooper, a 28-year-old construction worker.
I don't know him that well. I met him at work a few months ago. You know, seemed like a cool guy.
Everything was fine until 2 weeks ago when he said in his words, Adam started going downhill.
Just feel like starting over. Like starting everything over.
What do you mean?
Think about heading out to California. Maybe you should come with me.
Can't. I've got a job. Come on now. Can't believe you guys found my car in Teller County. Figured you'd take it all the way to California.
Besides your car, did Adam make off with any of the other belongings?
Yeah, actually, I own a police scanner. It's missing. I think he swiped it.
This is back when anyone could buy one. People used to use them for entertainment to know what was going on.
So the question is obvious. Why does Cooper want a police scanner? Is his intent to track officers and their location or what it is they're doing?
Back at headquarters, Kenda follows up on their new suspect.
A records check on Adam Cooper reveals he's been in prison for 5 years for burglary, recently released. But all of his history are property crimes, not violent crimes, and not arson crimes.
Hey, Larry. Yeah, we pulled Cooper's file.
There's a very strong possibility that either Adam Cooper is the person responsible for this crime spree, or he certainly knows who might be. So now it becomes even more imperative that those involved in this case lay hands on Adam Cooper.
Lieutenant Kenda and Investigator Martin know just what to do.
Great, I'll meet you there.
Who's the best person out there that can help us find Adam Cooper? His mother. We want to talk to his mother.
Thankfully for us, Adam Cooper's mother, Carly, lives in Colorado Springs.
Have a seat. You'll have to forgive me, I haven't been feeling well lately.
Adam's mother is 52. She's been diagnosed with cancer and chronic health problems, including some mobility issues.
We're here to talk to you about your son, Adam.
Do you know where we can find him?
No, I haven't seen Adam in a couple of weeks. What's this about?
Well, we have reason to believe that Adam has been involved in the shooting of a police officer.
Oh, Adam.
She is almost emotionally overcome by the fact that her son could be involved in such a crime.
Guess I shouldn't be surprised, really.
What do you mean?
I haven't actually seen him, but I got a letter.
Yes?
It's just so upsetting.
Oh, really? Well, we need to know exactly what's in that letter. We're investigating the murder of a Teller County Sheriff's deputy. We've determined Adam Cooper is the probable thief of the car recovered at the scene. We're in contact with his mother, and she reports receiving a letter from him that has some very disturbing content.
Charlie indicated he was pretty upset, pretty depressed, was saying some things in the letter that scared her.
He's usually a pretty happy kid. It's just that since his stepfather and I divorced, he's not been the same.
The mother explains this has left her in financial straits, and she's unable to deal with the expenses involving her illness. And this has distressed Adam Cooper to a maximum level.
In the letter, Charlie describes Adam as saying that he's so angry with his stepfather, who has kind of left her high and dry. She's supposed to be getting alimony. He doesn't always send it.
I knew he was furious with his stepfather for leaving me in a lurch like this, but I never realized he wants to kill him.
He said that?
In the letter.
Adam indicated his plan was to kill his stepfather, and his thought was that the mother then would get his life insurance, and that would help her with her medical bills and whatnot.
However, Adam's plan to exact revenge on his stepfather had one insurmountable obstacle.
But his stepfather works for a contractor on the island of Guam. Adam Cooper is a parolee. He cannot legally leave the country under his own identity.
It's just all very weird. He feels like his sole purpose in life is to help me financially, get to his stepfather, get me his life insurance. And if he can't do that, then he doesn't have a purpose in life.
You mean like suicide?
At this point, I'm thinking Adam Cooper is the one involved in the murder of Deputy Holloway.
You still have this letter?
I do. It's over here.
May we see it, please?
Mm-hmm. It's in that binder.
The content of this letter clearly demonstrates that Adam Cooper is becoming unhinged.
But the letter still didn't explain to me why he would have killed Brett Holloway.
And as the sun sets over Pikes Peak, Investigator Martin decides to call off the search until morning.
You cannot search in the dark for an armed and dangerous individual unless you're suicidal.
First light, we get all of our people together and distribute photographs of Adam Cooper.
This here's the picture of him.
I put teams together. I didn't want individuals searching for Adam Cooper on their own.
I remember it like it was yesterday. Team 6 was my team.
Let's go get the son of a bitch.
As the teams carry out their search,
Base to Martin.
Martin receives word of an important development.
Go for Martin.
At that cabin, we weren't able to search. That homeowner's on her way. Could you meet her over there?
On the way.
On the first day of that search, they were unwilling to make forced entry into locked buildings. There was one particular cabin that they had not yet searched, and that owner finally has arrived at the scene.
I saw it on the news. What's going on? Is my house okay?
Yeah, I think so. We've just been looking around. We want to make sure that everything's okay. You mind we get inside?
No, that's fine.
Okay,
Let's go.
thank you.
I'm thinking, search several other cabins, haven't come up with anything. Are we really going to come up with anything here?
They're about to clear this, and Martin notices a look on the owner's face.
What's up?
Somebody's been here.
We asked her how she knew that. She said, well, looks like somebody's been eating food, and there's some clothes on the floor that do not belong to us.
My husband and I haven't been here for almost a month. I think that...
All of a sudden, we heard a noise on the second floor.
Go, go!
Martin immediately radios, and they have a possible suspect contained.
I want all the closest units over here right away.
The first search team that arrives is led by Detective Rocco of the Woodland Park Police Department.
I believe he's on the second floor. Remember, he's probably armed, okay? Okay. All right, let's go.
These are trained officers, and they're going to handle this as an entry team. Weapons will be pointed.
You guys ready? Yeah, ready.
Fingers are near the trigger. Everyone is on alert.
You guys ready?
Ready.
When I looked up the stairway, it was probably less than 3 feet wide. And I thought, wow, that's a dangerous situation right there for a police officer. Your only retreat is up or down. There's no place else to go.
They smell fresh cigarette smoke. Now they know somebody's there.
There's 2 doors at the top of the stairs. I open the door on the left. There's nothing in there. There's no furniture in there. It's just an empty room.
With the first bedroom cleared, Officer Rocco tries the second door.
All I had to do was reach up and grab the doorknob. It was locked. I heard a sound. The sound was metal to metal, a click click, which is distinctive to a police officer. Every police officer knows this sound.
There's no question that's the operating slide of a semi-automatic pistol being cycled. Someone is placing a live round in the chamber and cocking the hammer.
When I hear that sound, I know that this guy means business.
The officers are prepared to engage in a gun battle to the death. He's already killed one police officer. He's not afraid to do it again. Those officers now know that they are in a life and death circumstance, and they're prepared to cut this suspect down.
Police department, open up, show me your hands.
I told him he was surrounded and he wasn't going to leave that room unless he surrendered.
I'm standing on the front porch. I hear this going on. And then I hear a gunshot. Immediately react. Oh my God, are my guys being shot at or my guys doing the shooting?
He observes a Caucasian male in his late 20s sitting in a bed upright, blood pouring out of his head from an apparent gunshot wound to the mouth.
Let's call him an ambulance.
Sir, 47.
It's him. It's Adam Cooper. He shot himself.
Mr. Cooper had been threatening suicide to his mother, and he apparently decided this was the moment to carry it out. Better him than one of us.
He wasn't responsive at all. Medical arrived on scene probably 5 minutes later, but he died.
Martin sees the weapon on the bed is a Smith & Wesson 6906 9mm, obviously Deputy Holloway's gun. There's a 12-gauge shotgun behind the door of the bedroom, and there's a police scanner on a table next to the bed.
Look at this.
But it's what police find next to the scanner that sends chills down their spine.
It's a check from a local bank made out to law enforcement in the amount of one dead officer, and it's signed by Adam Cooper.
I was repulsed when I saw that. You're actually writing out a check for the death of a police officer? It's despicable.
You look at someone like Cooper, and every police officer in that room is probably thinking, is there any possible way we could kill him again?
Let's get him out of here.
I felt, wow, is this the way this investigation is going to end? I know that Adam Cooper is the person who took Brett Holloway's life. What I don't know is why.
Then, in an unexpected twist, Larry Martin unlocks the answer to that very question.
Crime scene investigators come in, and he had found a journal that apparently he had been writing over the last several days.
The contents of it are absolutely startling.
According to Adam Cooper's journal, he broke into the cabin 4 days ago.
He's contemplating suicide. At one point, he has the shotgun, which was stolen in a burglary sometime before that. But can't get up the nerve to pull the trigger. When he's unable to pull this trigger, he talks about this monster of hate rising up inside of him. He's decided to redirect this monster of hate toward the judicial system. He blames the system for not forcing his stepfather to pay his mother the required alimony amounts.
His solution to this whole thing was kill cops, kill as many as I can kill. And that's what his plan was.
He decides to make Molotov cocktail bombs and start an arson fire in a building. And when the police arrive, he's going to pick them off one by one.
I believe he was using a police scanner to hear when the police officers were coming.
10-4. I don't believe a code A has been done. The complainant originally called in advising.
But when he set that fire, not only did the police officer show up, but lots and lots of volunteer firemen showed up there. So there was too many people for him to do what he actually wanted to do.
But according to a journal entry written later that night, Adam overheard something on the scanner that changed everything.
He's listening to the officers and hears one particular officer who they refer to on the radio as K-19. That is Brent Holloway's call sign. As the units begin to clear, K-19 is instructed to remain behind and guard the scene until daylight. Cooper now believes he has his opportunity.
Brent was sitting there. He could sneak up from behind unseen in the dark. Brent would never have seen him coming up behind him.
Cooper sticks the shotgun in the window and shoots the officer in the face. After he killed the officer, Cooper explains in the diary he is overwhelmed by guilt. He wonders about the officer's family, if he has children, and he rants on and on about the evil of what he's done. As the diary draws to a close, he realizes he's been discovered in this cabin. He hears officers quietly coming up the stairs. He knows the end has come. He decides he's going to kill himself before the officers kill him.
Police department, open up! Show me your hands!
I was angry, very angry when I heard that he'd killed himself. And I could never, never forgive him for that. He should have stood trial.
Brent was the first line of duty death for the Teller County Sheriff's Department.
Hundreds of law officers, family, and friends turned out in Teller County to pay tribute to a deputy sheriff killed in the line of duty.
By the hundreds, they came to the mountaintop to pay their last respects.
It's a small sheriff's department. It's a small police department. So we knew each other. We worked with each other daily. And it's just something you're never prepared for in any way, shape, or form.
Brent Holloway was just 27 years old. Friends describe him as a devoted husband, friend, and law enforcement officer.
We want to praise him, to remember him always. We need to tell you all about the beloved husband, son, brother, and friend that Brent was.
This is a tragic case. You have Deputy Brett Holloway, who dedicated his life to taking care of his community and taking care of his family, and is wiped out by one deranged person.
We were high school sweethearts. I still think, even though I'm happily married now, I still think that we would have been happily married. There's always that question of what if? Would we still be in the same house, and all the different adventures and things that we had missed out on? Where would we have gone next?
Deputy Holloway was the salt of the earth, the very person to be loved and admired in this country. How do you suffer through this? As best you can.
The headline lands like a siren in the middle of the night. Oregon, 1997 cold case solved. 8 words, sharp as broken glass, tearing open a story this town has been trying to bury for nearly 3 decades. Before it was a headline, before it was a case file swollen with dead ends and bad theories, it was just a girl driving home on a wet October evening, along a road she knew by heart, into a darkness so ordinary, nobody thought to fear it. It starts on a Thursday. October 9th, 1997. Small town Oregon, where the forest presses right up against the last gas station light, where the air smells like wet pine and diesel, where people know each other's dogs by name and still leave keys in the ignition outside the grocery store. Here, life moves slow. High school football under yellow field lights, bingo at the church basement, logging trucks sighing through town at dawn. Routine, predictable, safe. Until the night the routine shatters and the word missing becomes something whispered instead of joked about. She is 17, a senior. Her name is written in neat blue ink on attendance sheets. Emily Carter. Brown hair that never quite stays in a ponytail. A denim jacket with one frayed cuff. A laugh her best friend swears you could recognize across a crowded gym. She is nobody special to the world, but to her little brother who waits for her on the front steps, to the mother counting tips at the kitchen table, to the boy who hasn't quite worked up the courage to ask her to homecoming. She is everything, and within hours, they'll all be lining up in a cramped sheriff's office saying the same thing over and over. No, she wouldn't just run away. Not Emily, not like this. That afternoon, the rain comes in sideways, a low gray sheet dragging across the highway, the kind of weather that makes headlights blur and time stretch. Inside the diner on Main, the air smells like burnt coffee and fryer oil. Emily works the last hour of her shift, moving fast between tables, pen tucked behind her ear. Coworkers will later say she kept glancing at the clock, that her fingers tapped the counter, that she was quieter than usual, eyes drifting toward the windows where the neon open sign flickers in the rain. At 5:30 p.m., she shrugs into her denim jacket, hooks her apron on the back wall, and calls out a quick, "See you tomorrow." No drama, no big goodbye, just another ordinary end to another ordinary shift. The bell over the door rings as she steps out into the damp evening where headlights smear across wet pavement and the sky hangs low, heavy, and colorless. Her car is a faded red Honda with a stubborn driver's door and cassette tapes scattered across the back seat. She starts the engine, wipers squeaking as they drag across the glass. Her route home is the same one she's driven 100 times. Past the feed store with the peeling sign, past the church whose crosslight flickers whenever the wind picks up, past the green metal marker that quietly announces the end of town and the beginning of endless trees where cell service dies and the world narrows to 2 yellow lines and your own thoughts. The last confirmed sighting of Emily is at 5:42 p.m. A convenience store camera on the corner catches her car at the intersection. The footage is grainy, black and white, timestamp bleeding into the corner of the frame, headlights on, wipers moving. For a second, the angle almost lets you see her profile, just a blur of a young girl at the wheel, a face that has no way of knowing it is about to be printed on missing posters, flashed on TV screens, stapled crookedly to telephone poles. She never makes it home. At 7:13 p.m., her mother calls the diner. She left over an hour ago, the manager says, eyes flicking to the empty hook where Emily's apron should be. At 7:26 p.m., and her stepfather gets in his truck and starts driving the route himself, shoulders tight, jaw clenched, wipers beating time with his heart. At 8:02 p.m., after 2 slow passes along the highway, after checking the grocery store, the school parking lot, the side roads that cut between neighborhoods, he dials 911. The dispatcher's voice is calm, trained, almost bored. Teenagers get delayed, phones die, plans change. But somewhere between, "Have you checked with her friends?" and "We'll put out a notice," something in his voice makes the room go quiet. Deputies roll out in mud-splattered cruisers that have spent more years handling bar fights and domestic calls than major crimes. A missing 17-year-old on a rainy night. They have their scripts. Maybe she had an argument at home. Maybe a boyfriend picked her up. Maybe she decided not to come straight back. The list of maybes is long, and they run through it mechanically as they sweep the main roads, parking lots, and side streets, red and blue lights flashing against storefront windows. By midnight, the maybes start to sound thin. No one has seen her. No one has heard from her. Her friends haven't gotten a call. Her room is untouched, bed still neatly made, backpack leaning against the wall where she dropped it that morning. Her diary, found later in the back of a drawer, stops on a perfectly ordinary entry. Homework, a test she's worried about, a note about making sure she doesn't miss her brother's school play next week. No secret plans, no hidden life, no hint that she intended to vanish. By the early hours of Friday, the search leaves the pavement. Flashlights punch narrow tunnels of light into the rain and underbrush. Deputies, off-duty firefighters, and volunteers slog through wet ditches and brush, boots sucking at the mud. They call her name into the trees until their voices are hoarse. Car doors thud shut in the dark. Radios hiss and crackle. The forest swallows sound. An owl calls once. Somewhere closer, a dog barks, then falls silent. On the edge of town, porch lights flicker on one by one as news spreads faster than any official bulletin ever could. Mysterious disappearance. Vanished on the way home. No signs of struggle on the road. No skid marks. No broken guardrail. No car sitting crooked in any of the usual drainage ditches. It is as if the highway simply opened up and swallowed her. At sunrise, the sheriff stands in a muddy turnout off Highway 22, steam from his coffee curling into the cold air. A paper map is spread across the hood of his cruiser, corners held down by radios and plastic evidence bags. Red ink circles mark logging roads, ravines, old turnouts choked with brush. Engines idle in the background, low rumble beneath the patter of rain. The deputies' faces are drawn in gray. They have been here before, in other cases, other towns, but something about the sheer blankness of this one unsettles them. Around 9 a.m, the sky is a uniform sheet of dull metal when the search goes vertical. A state police helicopter sweeps the area, rotors chopping the air, skimming low over the tree line. From above, the highway looks thin and fragile, a strip of asphalt carved through an endless dark green sea. At 9:17 a.m., the pilot's voice snaps through the radio, tight and clipped. Got a vehicle. Coordinates follow. A pause. Red sedan. Looks recent. Cruisers tear out of the turnout, gravel spraying, engines roaring as they lurch onto the highway and then disappear down a narrow, rutted road that once led to an active logging site and now goes nowhere anyone has a reason to travel. Branches scrape the paint as they push deeper into the trees, following the directions relayed from the chopper. When they see it, everything goes very quiet. Emily's red Honda sits nose down in a shallow ravine, half hidden by wet ferns and low branches, as if the forest itself tried to cover it. The angle is wrong for a serious crash. The front bumper is cracked, mud packed into the grille. The windshield is spiderwebbed but not blown out. The driver's side door is closed. No airbags hang limp, no smoke curls from under the hood. The engine is cold. There is no body in the driver's seat, no dazed teenager stumbling around nearby. Yellow crime scene tape snakes between trees as they lock the area down. Cameras click. Evidence markers bloom along the wet ground like small, bright warnings. Emily's purse lies on the front passenger seat. Her wallet is inside, cash untouched. Her student ID, her smiling face frozen behind cheap plastic, stares up from a side pocket. Her backpack is crumpled in the back. A cassette tape sticks halfway out of the player, ready to start the same song it played every day on the ride home. There is no obvious blood, no shattered glass on the ground, no clear second set of tire tracks leading in or out. Just the deep, clean ruts of her wheels sliding off the road and down into the ditch, stopping short as if something interrupted the path and redirected the story away from any understandable ending. Maybe she crawled out, someone says, disoriented, hurt, wandered into the trees. All eyes lift toward the thick wall of forest rising behind the car, a dark, dripping curtain of pine and moss and slick earth. It's possible. It fits a version of events where nature is the only villain. But already, there is another version forming in the back of everyone's mind, one with footsteps that don't belong to Emily. One with a second presence at the edge of the road. One where the woods are not just deep, but hiding. By noon, the media arrive. Local reporters first, bundled in raincoats, microphones sealed in plastic, eyes sharp for reaction shots. Then a regional TV crew from Portland, the ones who specialize in phrases like small community and shock and mystery deepens. Their cameras drink in every detail, the glint of a license plate through branches, the flash of uniforms against the green, the distant figure of a woman being held back by 2 deputies as her knees nearly buckle. "That's her car," Emily's mother keeps repeating, voice frayed raw. "That's her car." 3 words over and over, as if enough repetition might force an answer to materialize out of the dripping trees. But the forest offers nothing, only the steady beat of the rain on metal and the low murmur of officers trying to keep their own voices steady. By that evening, the phrase "cold case" hasn't yet been whispered. It doesn't belong to a night lit by searchlights and hope, not while there are still boots pounding the ground, helicopters overhead, search dogs straining at their leashes. But the ingredients are already here, scattered across the mud and the silence, a car off a forgotten road, a girl with no reason to leave, a stretch of highway with no cameras and no witnesses, a gap in time nobody can fill. Detectives from the State Major Crimes Unit arrive under cover of dark, the sweep of their headlights washing over the taped-off ravine. They move differently from the local deputies, slower, more deliberate, as if every step is being recorded. They crouch beside the car, trace the slope of the ground with their eyes, study the broken ferns, the scuffed bark, the faint impressions in the mud that might be nothing or might be everything. How did the car leave the road? Why here, at this turnout that leads to nothing but a forgotten logging trail? Why is there no long skid, no desperate fight etched into the gravel? Why does the scene feel staged, like an answer planted where a question should be? Back in town, the fear hardens. Parents who once trusted the dark now leave porch lights on all night. Teenagers who used to walk home cut in groups from one pool of streetlight to the next. People start looking twice at each other, at the man who always sits alone at the counter of the diner, at the stranger seen hitchhiking near the highway 2 days earlier, at the neighbor whose blinds are always drawn and who never joins in small talk. At the high school, Emily's empty desk and homeroom becomes a constant reminder, a small hollow space in an ordinary room. Someone tapes a photo of her to the side of the desk. Flowers appear. Notes get slipped into her locker. Her name is read over the intercom in a voice that tries not to shake. Counselors are brought in. The word the principal uses in the assembly is incident. The words the students whisper between themselves are different. Kidnapping, stalker, murder. By the end of the second day, the story has outgrown the town. Regional news stations run the same 30 seconds of footage on a loop. Flashing lights, the red car in the ravine, a deputy ducking under tape, a grainy yearbook photo of Emily dissolving over the image of the forest. Mysterious disappearance. Oregon teen vanishes. Car found abandoned off rural road. A headline in motion. For viewers far away, it's a chilling interruption between weather and sports. For the people who pass that turnout every morning on their way to work, it's a wound that doesn't close. And in the middle of the maps and the interviews and the speculation, one detail starts to rise above the noise. From the moment Emily left the diner parking lot to the moment the helicopter spotted her car, there are 35 unaccounted for minutes. 35 minutes missing from her life. No calls, no witnesses, no credit card use, no camera catching her at another intersection. 35 minutes in which a straight, familiar drive turned into a dead end in a ravine off a forgotten road. Those 35 minutes will become the black hole at the center of the case. They will be circled on whiteboards, reconstructed in painstaking timelines, written and rewritten in the notebooks of detectives who will lie awake at night trying to imagine what could have happened in such a short stretch of time. For her family, they will be a loop that never stops playing, over and over, minute by minute, down to each imagined second. Because somewhere inside those missing 35 minutes, on a wet, ordinary Thursday in 1997, whatever happened to Emily Carter took shape. And from that moment on, this quiet Oregon town stopped being just another dot on the map and became something else entirely. The setting of a mystery that refused to stay in the past, no matter how many years people tried to pretend it had ended. 35 minutes. Detectives say it out loud like it's a riddle they can solve by sheer repetition. One of them, a man with graying hair and the permanent squint of someone who reads too much bad handwriting, draws a straight line on the whiteboard in the temporary command post set up at the fire station. On one end, he writes 5:42 p.m., intersection camera. On the other, 6:17 p.m., estimated time car leaves, roadway. Between the two, he leaves the space blank. No arrows, no notations. Just an empty stretch of time that might as well be miles of dark road with the headlights turned off. The command post smells like coffee, wet coats, and photocopy toner. Maps are taped to every available surface. Highlighters bleed neon paths through logging roads and hike-in trails. A corkboard blooms with printouts of Emily's school photo, the car in the ravine, close-ups of tire tracks and snapped branches. Beneath it all, the low murmur of radios never fully stops. Dispatch codes, units checking in. Background noise to the growing sense that this is not going to be one of those neat stories where the girl turns up sheepish at a friend's house and everyone breathes again. They start with the obvious. Co-workers at the diner. The manager who runs his hands through his thinning hair until it stands up in tired spikes. The cook who remembers the order of the last burger he flipped more clearly than Emily's expression when she took off her apron. Customers who were sitting in booths by the windows watching the rain. They're marched one by one into the back office, sat under a buzzing fluorescent light, asked the same questions in slightly different ways. Did she seem upset? Did she take any calls? Did she mention plans? Did anyone come in asking for her? The answers come back soft and useless. She was quieter than usual. She kept checking the clock. She wiped the same table twice. One regular swears he saw a man at the counter watching her too closely, but when pressed, all he can offer is middle-aged baseball cap, maybe a mustache. Half the town could match that description. Next, her family. A living room turned interview room. The TV is off. Curtains half drawn. A deputy sits with a notepad balanced on his knee while the lead detective takes the armchair, hands loose, voice measured. Emily's mother perches on the edge of the couch, twisting a tissue in her fingers until it's nothing but damp shreds. The stepfather leans against the doorway, arms folded tight, jaw clenched, eyes tracking every question like each one is a potential accusation. Did she fight with anyone recently? Any boyfriends we need to know about? Any talk of leaving? Drugs? Drinking? Parties? No. 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 She wasn't perfect, but she was predictable. A job, school, helping with her brother's homework, the occasional sleepover. The worst rule she ever broke was sneaking out after curfew once to go stargazing at the quarry with her best friend. They got grounded for a month. Lesson learned. She hated seeing her mom cry. She wasn't the type to cause that on purpose. Her room is examined like it's a crime scene, though nobody says the word out loud. Posters on the walls, mix of bands and movie stars. A stack of textbooks on the desk, one open with a highlighter line frozen mid-sentence. A half-finished sketch taped to the mirror. Pencil lines of a forest path leading into darkness. An accidental echo of the road where her car was found. Drawers are opened. Jewelry boxes checked. Under the bed, nothing but a stray sock and a notebook full of doodles and half-started poems. No hidden second phone. No stash of money. No secret letters. The detectives widen the circle. Friends are called in. The best friend, Jenna, sits at the interview table with her eyes swollen from crying, knuckles white where she grips a styrofoam cup. She talks fast, her words tumbling over each other, trying to build a version of Emily that makes sense to the people taking notes. She was fine, she insists. Well, stressed about math and about college stuff, but normal stressed, you know. We talked about her essay that morning. We were going to work on it together this weekend. She wouldn't just not show up. Did Emily mention anyone bothering her? Any weird calls? A car that seemed to follow? A man who didn't belong? Jenna hesitates, just long enough for the detectives to lean in a fraction. There was this one guy, she admits. A couple weeks ago. We were walking from school and this pickup slowed way down. The driver just stared, long enough that it got creepy. Em said she'd seen that truck near the diner a few times. Old blue Ford, I think. Rust on the wheel, well. But she thought maybe she was just being paranoid. No license number, no clear look at the driver's face. Just that sick, prickling feeling between the shoulder blades you get when you know you're being watched. It's noted, underlined, blue Ford, rust near wheel well, another maybe in a stack of maybes. On day 3, the search dogs hit on something near the ravine. Handlers work them in slow, looping sweeps through the dripping underbrush. The dogs move with purpose, noses low, tails stiffening when they catch a scent. Cameras linger at the edge of the tape as the first shout goes up. For a few suspended seconds, everyone holds their breath. It isn't Emily. It's a scrap of fabric snagged on a branch, the same denim shade as her jacket, torn free as someone pushed or was pulled through the brush. Near it, faint impressions in the mud resolve into footprints when the light hits them right. One set small, consistent with her size. Another larger, deeper, overlapping in places like someone walking close behind, or in front, or beside. It's impossible to tell in the chaos of disturbed earth and trampling boots, but the idea of a second set is enough. The narrative in the command post shifts. Accident becomes less likely. Voluntary disappearance drops to almost nothing. The word nobody wanted to use on day 1 starts to creep in around the edges of conversation on day 4. Abduction, kidnapping, foul play. It shows up first in the way the detectives carry themselves, in the hardening lines of their faces, in the way they talk more quietly when family members walk into the room. Posters go up. Emily's school photo, the only recent high-resolution image anyone can find, is enlarged, her smile grainier but still there. Missing in bold block letters above her name. Last seen October 9th, 1997. Red Honda Civic located. Any information call. The posters are taped to gas pumps, tacked to bulletin boards, stapled into weathered wooden poles already crowded with yard sale signs and lost pet notices. The town rallies in waves. Volunteers sign up for search grids, cars lining the fairgrounds parking lot as people climb out with thermoses and rain gear. They wade through fields, comb creek beds, push through brambles that tear at their clothes. Teachers, cashiers, loggers, retirees, people who only knew Emily as the girl who always refilled their coffee cup without being asked, still show up, driven by something more primal than community spirit. This is not supposed to happen here. If they walk far enough, look hard enough, believe hard enough, maybe they can drag the story back onto some safer track. Leads pour in. The sheriff's office phone rings like an alarm that doesn't shut off. A driver thinks he saw a girl matching her description at a rest stop 2 towns over. A woman swears she heard a scream near the highway the night Emily disappeared, but can't pin down the time. Someone calls in an anonymous tip about a known troublemaker who never liked being told no. A bartender says a trucker passing through mentioned picking up a hitchhiker near the state line. None of it quite fits. All of it demands time. And then there's the anonymous call that doesn't get logged right. Late one night, while a skeleton crew manned the phones, a voice comes through the line, low and distorted by what might be a bad connection or might be deliberate. The dispatcher on duty will later struggle to recall the exact wording. Something about looking in the water, something about not everything being in the woods. The call drops before a trace can be run. In the scramble of the first week, amid a dozen other half-credible tips, it gets scribbled onto a sticky note and lost under a stack of maps. Days stretch. The rain eases, then returns, then eases again. Search areas expand outward like ripples. The initial media surge ebbs as other stories claw their way to the front page. The words "no new developments" appear in small resigned paragraphs beneath the fold. The cameras move on, but the people who drive past the turnout where the tape once fluttered are left with a constant background knowledge. Somewhere out there, in the dense tangle beyond the shoulder, the path just stops. Inside the investigation, frustration hardens into something sharper. The detectives examine the car again and again, crawling through it with flashlights and gloved hands. No signs of a prolonged struggle inside. No obvious foreign hairs or fibers beyond the usual contamination that comes with any teenager's life. A partial, smeared fingerprint on the outside of the driver's side door that doesn't belong to Emily, but also doesn't match anyone in the system. It could have been left at the gas station, at the grocery store, by a mechanic, or by the person who last closed that door. The crime lab turns around results as fast as it can, but backlogs are real, and time is a blunt instrument. Paint transfers, soil samples, the tread pattern of the tires matched to a brand sold in half the stores in the state. Nothing sings out. Nothing says, "Here, this is it." Attention swings to the blue Ford. Deputies park across from the diner in unmarked cars, watching traffic, eyes narrowing whenever an old pickup rolls by. They run plates, knock on doors, visit outlying farms and scrapyards. Rusted Fords are not exactly rare. Each potential truck is another day, another conversation with a wary owner who doesn't appreciate law enforcement poking around. They come up with a handful of guys who give off that sour, defensive air of men who've been in trouble before. Warrants are run, alibis checked. None of them slot neatly into the timeline. The community starts to fracture along invisible seams. In the first week, suspicion focused outward on the nameless stranger, the drifter, the out-of-towner. By week 3, eyes begin to turn inward, whispers in the grocery aisles, sideways glances at PTA meetings. "You know he used to. I heard she saw." Harmless quirks become red flags overnight. A man who keeps to himself is suddenly hiding something. A teenager with a temper is one bad rumor away from being treated like a predator. For Emily's family, the world has shrunk to a few rooms and a handful of routines. Morning starts with hope, brittle as sponge sugar and just as easy to shatter. Coffee goes cold on the table as they stare at the phone, willing it to ring. At noon, someone from the department usually stops by. An update, a new angle, a progress report that rarely contains anything solid. Afternoons stretch. The TV murmurs without anyone really watching it. Dinner turns into a series of false starts. Plates set, then abandoned when a car door slams outside or the phone trills too loudly. At night, in the narrow hours when the searchers are home and the cameras are dark, the worst possibilities creep in. They don't announce themselves. They come as images, as sounds, as what-ifs sharp enough to keep anyone who loves her sitting upright in bed, staring into the dark. Halloween approaches. Ordinarily, the town decorates early. Fake cobwebs in shop windows. Paper ghosts dangling from porch lights. This year, the enthusiasm is muted. Some houses never put decorations up at all. Others hang them as if by rote, plastic skeletons clacking listlessly in the wind, as if embarrassed to be there. Parents grip their children's hands a little tighter crossing streets. Teenagers used to roaming free after dark suddenly find their curfews enforced like law. Flyers for a candlelight vigil go up. In the church, rows of metal chairs are set out. On the night itself, it feels like the entire town is crammed inside. The air is heavy with wax and damp coats. Emily's photo is propped up near the altar, framed by the soft flicker of votive candles. People who haven't prayed in years bow their heads anyway. The pastor speaks about hope, about not giving in to fear, about a light shining in the darkness. Afterward, people spill out into the cool night, candles cupped in their hands, flames wavering as they walk slowly down Main Street. From above, if anyone were watching, the procession would look like a thin, wavering line of light cutting through the center of a town surrounded on all sides by shadow. The weeks become months. The whiteboard in the command post fills, then gets wiped clean, then fills again with new versions of the same unanswered questions. Detectives come and go as other cases demand attention. The core few who stay on Emily's case develop a kind of haunted fluency, able to recite timelines and alibis the way other people recite sports stats or family birthdays. Tips slow to a trickle. The posters fade, edges curling, colors leached by rain and winter sun. Some are taken down to make room for new notices. Others remain ghostly and tattered, the staples rusting into the wood. That smiling school photo becomes less a real girl and more a symbol for what was lost, for what was never found. The file thickens. New reports are added. Follow-up interviews, lab results, the transcript of a psychic's phone call earnestly describing a vision of water and a great sadness that matches half the rivers in the state. Everything is documented, no matter how outlandish, because that's what procedure demands. Over time, the case number on the top right corner of each report begins to carry a weight of its own, a shorthand among deputies for that one that still bothers them. The word finally appears in writing almost a year after Emily vanished. A brief internal memo circulated among supervisors, mentions resources being reallocated, active investigations being prioritized, and older, unresolved cases transitioning to cold status. It is a bureaucratic way of saying something everyone has felt creeping in for months. The searchlights have been turned off, the helicopters grounded, the task force disbanded. What remains is a thinner, quieter kind of work, checking a new lead when it drifts in, running a name when it comes up in connection with something else, filing it all away in the same thick binder. On paper, it is now a cold case. In reality, in living rooms and high school reunions and late-night conversations on porches, it never cools. It lingers, like fog on the highway where the trees press close. A girl who never came home. A car in a ravine. 35 missing minutes. And in the silence left behind by sirens and search parties, the town learns to live with an unfinished story, humming constantly in the background of their lives, waiting for something or someone to finally press play again. Time does something strange to stories like this. At first it stretches every second, dragging them out, making each day feel like a week, each week like a season. Then, slowly, without anyone quite noticing when the shift happens, it starts to compress. Whole years begin to fold up into a handful of sharp moments. The phone call that never came, the birthday that felt wrong, the day they stopped setting a place for her at Christmas dinner. By the time 5 years have passed, the highway where Emily disappeared has changed. The pavement's been resurfaced. Reflective posts line the curves now, bright white sentries blinking in headlights. A guardrail has been installed near the ravine. metal ribs catching the light on rainy nights. People driving past can't see the exact spot anymore. They know it's somewhere along that stretch between the mile markers that look like any others. They still glance sideways without meaning to. The trees there seem a little thicker. The shadows feel a little heavier. In the sheriff's office, the file marked Carter, Emily R., sits on a metal shelf behind glass, the thick spine sagging slightly from the weight of its contents. Newer cases stand in front of it. Fresh names, fresh dates. But when a certain few deputies walk past that shelf, their eyes flick almost involuntarily to that familiar case number. Like checking on an old wound they know will still be there. Some things never change. Her mother still keeps the porch light on. It burned out once, 3 years in, and she replaced it as fast as most people would rush to reset a tripped breaker in the dead of winter. She does it without thinking now. Buy milk, pay the power bill, never let that bulb go dark. Superstition. Habit. Promise. All braided so tight they can't be separated. Her stepfather still drives that road sometimes. Not as often as he used to. In the first year, he drove it so much he could have mapped every imperfection in the asphalt from memory. Now it's more sporadic. A bad night, a restless morning, a dream that clings too hard. He pulls over near where the old turnout used to be, leaves his truck idling, stares at the curtain of trees, and listens to the engine tick as it cools. He rarely gets out now. He's learned the forest doesn't answer questions. Her little brother, Tyler, is no longer little. At 12, he passed a quiet milestone nobody marked. He became older than the last version of his sister he remembers clearly. His memories of her now feel like scenes from an old home movie shot on bad tape. Her tying his shoes in the hallway, her rolling her eyes when he stole her headphones, her face half hidden behind a curtain of hair as she bent over her homework at the kitchen table. The world knows her as yearbook photo Emily. He remembers chipped nail polish and the exact rhythm of her laugh. He keeps the flyers, the ones that used to hang in grocery stores and on telephone poles, curling and fading. He peels them down before they're thrown away, smooths them out, tucks them into a shoebox under his bed. The box grows heavier over the years. So does the silence at family dinners when her name comes up. Eventually, he starts saying it out loud more than anyone else, stubbornly keeping it present, as if refusing to let the house adjust to the new dimensions of being one person short. The investigation doesn't die, it just cools. Every so often, a new detective picks up the file, flipping through the pages with fresh eyes, hunting for whatever their predecessors might have missed. The town gets used to the pattern, a flurry of renewed interest, a local news piece, maybe a sketch artist's age-progressed image on the 6 o'clock broadcast showing what Emily might look like at 23, then 26. People stare at the TV, seeing both a stranger and someone painfully familiar. Then, inevitably, things quiet down again. There are spikes. There are always spikes. Like the time, 3 years after Emily vanished, when fishermen pull a body from a river 40 miles away. Female, young, brown hair. For a few hours, the town moves as if underwater. Conversations slow, hands shake, people turn on their TVs, call each other, refresh news sites. The sheriff's office phones light up before the state lab has even finished their preliminary exam. It isn't her. The relief that follows is so twisted by guilt, it barely feels like relief at all. Another family's nightmare has just begun. Emily's continues, suspended, unchanged. Tyler hears his mother whisper, late one night when she thinks no one can hear her, "At least with a body you can bury something." It's the kind of sentence that leaves a taste in the air for days. Inside the case file, the same names come up again and again. There's the local mechanic who once fixed a dent in Emily's car and made 2 off-color jokes about her looks in front of a witness. He's interviewed 3 separate times over the years, his story consistent, his resentment at being dragged in again growing each round. There's the ex-logger with a domestic violence record who drives a blue Ford with rust along the wheel well. He swears he was out of town the night she disappeared. His alibi, 2 drinking buddies and a motel clerk, barely holds together, but it holds enough that, without anything more solid, he remains a dark cloud on the edge of the file, never fully storming into focus. And then there's the theory nobody says out loud until one detective, new to the town and not yet trained in its particular grief, floats it in a briefing. What if someone closer to her is responsible? The room goes very still. They've run the usual checks, of course. Family first. It's investigative instinct, ugly but necessary. The stepfather's timeline has been scrutinized, phone records pulled, co-workers interviewed. He passed a polygraph in the first month. He cooperated with every search, opened his house to every question, swallowed every suspicious glance like a man eating glass. On paper, he cleared the bar. In the shadows of gossip, he never quite did. The detective suggests revisiting him, framing it as standard procedure in a cold case review. The sheriff, who has watched that man aged 10 years in one, shuts it down with a flat shake of his head. There are lines you can cross in the name of thoroughness. There are others you can't step over unless you're sure. They're not sure. Not enough to break what's left of a family held together by threads. So the focus slides back outward. They revisit the car, not physically, but through photographs and reports. Someone digs out an old lab analysis of the undercarriage, dirt and plant material scraped from the metal. Back then, the report came back with a bland summary, consistent with local soils. This time, a younger analyst notices a note in the margin, a brief mention of unusually fine silt mixed in, more typical of riverbank sediment than the rocky, root-tangled soil of the ravine. It was never followed up. Not enough staff, too many cases, too few hours in the day. It becomes another question added to the pile. Was the car ever near a river that day? Was that silt from some other drive, another time? Or does it mean the route Emily took before ending up off that forgotten logging road was longer, stranger, more twisted than anyone has managed to map? In a sealed evidence box on a back shelf, a cigarette butt waits. It was collected from the edge of the turnout where her car left the highway. At the time, it was bagged and tagged like everything else, logged in neat handwriting and then effectively sidelined. DNA analysis was expensive, slow, reserved for higher priority homicides with bodies and clear scenes. A missing girl with no confirmed crime attached didn't rank the same. They dusted it for prints, got a blurry partial, and moved on. Years later, in an era when cold case units in bigger cities start reprocessing old evidence with better DNA techniques, that cigarette will become important. For now, it's just another piece of trash in a plastic sleeve, living in the dark alongside fibers, soil samples, and a torn scrap of denim that might be proof of a struggle or just proof that brambles are unforgiving. Outside the evidence room, life keeps moving. Jenna leaves town 2 years after graduation. Too many memories, too many ghost versions of her best friend sitting in the passenger seat every time she drives past the diner. She tells herself she'll get away for a while, build something new, send money back when she can. Before she goes, she and Tyler start a basic website on a second-hand computer. A pale, early internet page with flashing text and a handful of scanned photos. Emily Carter, still missing. They don't know what they're doing. Broken links, clunky layout, an email address that sometimes eats messages, but they get visitors, strangers, other families with their own missing faces. The site becomes a small, flickering lighthouse in the vast, chaotic sea of the web. Every few months, Jenna updates it from whatever city she's landed in. New contact numbers, a summary of the case in careful, steady language. She learns words she never thought she'd have to type. Cold case, unresolved, presumed. She never brings herself to add the final one, deceased. As far as she's concerned, that belongs in other people's stories, not Emily's. At the 10th anniversary memorial, a reporter from a Portland true crime show comes to town. He's got the practiced, solemn tone, the slightly too perfect hair, the promise of bringing renewed attention to a forgotten file. The crew sets up across from the diner, cameras capturing the way the neon sign has been replaced, the booths reupholstered, the staff turned over until almost no one who works there now ever wiped crumbs from a plate she carried. In his voiceover, he names the case something catchy and cruelly simple, the Highway 22 disappearance. It sounds like a movie, like something that should have an ending by the time the credits roll. The episode airs late on a Sunday night. It's rerun twice that month. Tips come in afterward from viewers as far away as Idaho and Nevada. People convinced they saw her in a bus station, in a mall, in the background of a tourist photo. Investigators chase a few. Most evaporate on contact. None bring her any closer. In quiet corners of the internet, the case starts to grow a different kind of life. Message boards, early forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries. Anonymous users trade theories late into the night, combing over every public detail they can find. They pull up maps, compare distances, argue over the significance of the torn denim, the unseen man in the blue Ford, the anonymous water call that only surfaced years later when someone reviewing the initial logs noticed a gap in the documentation. Some think she was taken by a passing long-haul driver. Others fixate on the logging roads, imagining a local predator who knows the forest too well. One poster, hiding behind a string of numbers and letters, suggests that the car in the ravine was staged and that Emily never made it out of town at all. They pick apart her relationships, her family, her job, as if you can solve a life like a crossword puzzle. The detectives don't officially participate in these conversations, but some of them read along, late at night, the blue glow of a home computer highlighting the tight lines around their eyes. Every now and then, buried deep in the noise, a comment makes them sit up straighter. A mention of a similar case in another county, a truck route they hadn't considered. A bar along the highway where a drifter who drove an old Ford once bragged about knowing how to make people disappear. They print those ones out, add them to the file. Seasons turn. Winters drop snow along the tree line, muffling the world. Springs bring floods that swell the creeks and send branches and trash tumbling downstream. Summers bake the asphalt, rising waves of heat making the road ahead look like it's breathing. Through it all, the ravine where the Honda once sat shifts and settles. Grass grows back, saplings creep higher. Whatever marks were left by the frantic early days, boot prints, dug-in heels, the scar of the car being hauled back up, soften into the general roughness of the landscape. If you pull over there now, get out, and stand very still, you might think you're alone. You're not. You're standing in a place that has absorbed 10,000 questions and not given a single one back. A place that lives in the back of the mind of every kid who grew up in this town. A silent warning at the edge of their freedom. Don't stay out too late. Don't pick up strangers. Don't think bad things only happen on the news. For Tyler, for Jenna, for the officers whose names are on the earliest reports, it's more personal than that. It's a line drawn through their lives, before the car was found and after. And yet, in the middle of all that stillness, in a box on a shelf, the case waits with a kind of quiet patience. The cigarette butt, the partial print, the soil with its hint of river silt. The anonymous call transcript recovered from an old, nearly discarded notebook. The file isn't just paper and plastic, it's potential, not enough on its own to shout. Just enough, someday, to answer when the right technology, the right person, the right slip of a tongue finally knocks on the door of 1997 and asks a different kind of question. Because the thing about a cold case is simple and brutal. Time works for the killer until the day it doesn't. The first crack doesn't look like a crack at all. It looks like another form, another policy, another quiet shift nobody bothers to celebrate. On a gray Monday in early spring, long after most of the cameras have stopped caring about places like this, the state approves funding for a small, specialized cold case unit. Not big, not flashy, just a handful of detectives, a couple of analysts, and a mandate that sounds simple on paper. Go back, look again. Use what we have now on what we didn't understand then. On a list tacked to a corkboard in a city 2 hours away, the name Emily R. Carter appears as a line of text among dozens of others. A case number, a date, 10/9/1997, circled once in blue ink. Someone has scribbled 2 words beside it. Car found. Enter Detective Mark Rios. He's mid-40s, shoulders starting to carry the slope of someone who's spent more of his life leaning over desks than he cares to admit. Transferred in from a larger department where he worked gangs and narcotics. He's seen what people do to each other for money, for pride, for nothing at all. He's tired, but not hollowed out yet. There's still enough stubbornness left in him to believe that some endings can be forced into existence if you press hard enough. On his second week in the new unit, a supervisor drops a stack of files on his desk. Start with these, the man says. Ones with physical evidence we can reprocess. Stuff we didn't have the tech for back then. Rios thumbs through the files, yellowed photocopies, black and white photos with dates printed along the edges, names that mean nothing to him yet, until one stops him, a red car in a ravine, a forested turnout, a girl's school photo, eyes bright, smile easy, missing, the caption under the original poster says. That word has been crossed out in red pen and replaced years later with another, unsolved. Oregon, he asks. Out in Marion County? His supervisor nods. Yeah. Small town off 22. You'll love the drive. They've still got the box. Cigarette butt, some trace, fibers. Never fully run through modern DNA. Not properly, anyway. No resources, no priority. For them, this thing is personal. They've been staring at it for 20-plus years. Might be good to send in someone who hasn't lived with it. Rios looks at the photo again. 17. Hoodie and denim jacket. The kind of picture that ends up on fridge magnets and in funeral programs. He doesn't know, in that moment, that this face will soon occupy more space in his mind than almost any living person. Right now, she's just ink and paper. He picks up the file. The drive out to the town is exactly what everyone always says about these places. 2-lane blacktop slicing through fields and low hills, then narrowing as the forest closes in. The radio drifts between static and classic rock. The sky is the pale, washed-out blue of early spring, clouds stacked low on the horizon. As he nears the exit, the GPS blips, recalculates, gives up. Service sinks to 1 bar, then nothing. The sheriff's office hasn't changed much since 1997. Same brick building, same flag out front, edges frayed by wind. Inside, the fluorescent buzz and the smell of burnt coffee could belong to any department in the state. But you can feel the age on the walls, old plaques, old photos of retirees lined up in stiff poses. And in a glass front cabinet near a side hallway, the same thick file that's been watching people walk past it for years. Sheriff Harris is older now. The mustache has gone from brown to white. The lines around his mouth have carved themselves deeper. He shakes Rios's hand firmly with the careful politeness of a man who has seen too many promises come and go. "So," Harris says when they're seated in his office, "you're the cavalry." "Just another pair of eyes," Rios answers. "And a better lab than you had in '97. Harris studies him for a moment, decides he believes him, or at least wants to. "You want to see the scene?" the sheriff asks. "Yeah," Rios says. "I do." They take a cruiser out along the highway. The trees on either side are taller now, thicker. The new guardrail gleams in the weak light. They pass the mile marker. Harris signals and pulls over onto a narrow gravel shoulder just beyond where the turnout used to be before the state improved the road and erased the most visible scar from the landscape. "That's about where it was," Harris says, nodding toward the dense wall of green. "Ravine drops off maybe 20 yards in. Car was nose down. You can't see it from here anymore." Rios gets out, gravel crunching under his boots. The air smells like damp earth and pine. A passing truck roars by, wind rocking the cruiser slightly. Then the sound dissolves into the hush of the forest. He walks to the edge of the trees, careful not to trample anything new and fragile, even though he knows, logically, time has already swept the surface clean. He looks anyway, down the slope, where ferns crowd in, up the rise, where the highway curves out of sight. "You still drive this road?" he asks over his shoulder. "Every day," Harris says. "You learn to stop staring at that spot, or you pretend you have." Rios stands there a moment longer, eyes narrowing as he imagines a red Honda here, half hidden, headlights dark. He pictures a 17-year-old girl's last known minutes. The rain, the wipers, the turn from the main road onto this almost road. Why? Voluntary? Forced? Flagged down? Rerouted? He turns back toward the cruiser. The answer isn't out here, not anymore. Whatever was left to find in the dirt and ferns is long gone. The answer is in the box. Back at the sheriff's office, they unlock the evidence room, a metal shelf, labels with case numbers, cardboard boxes sagging slightly in the middle. The one from '97 is easy to spot. Someone drew a small star in the corner years ago, a quiet mark of importance that never made it into any official log. Inside, plastic bags carefully sealed, a purse, wallet, cassette tapes, a fragment of denim, swabs, soil samples in vials, and, in a separate, smaller bag, a single cigarette butt, filter bent, paper stained. "That one was right near where the car left the road," Harris says quietly. "Could be nothing. Could be some hunter from earlier that week. Could be him." Rios holds the bag up to the light, turning it slightly. No brand markings visible from this angle, just the pale curve of the filter. The potential sitting there, small enough to pinch between two fingers. "Back then," Harris continues, we ran prints. Not much else. DNA like that. It was for big city murder trials, serial rapists. We didn't have the lab support, budget. Hell, even if we had gotten a profile, the national databases weren't what they are now. Maybe we could have matched it to someone if they were already in the system. Maybe not. "But you kept it," Rios says. "We kept everything," the sheriff answers, "even when we didn't know why we were keeping it." Rios nods. "I'm going to get this to our lab, full workup, not just the cigarette, the denim, the soil, anything that might hold trace. You never know what sticks." He signs for the evidence, the chain of custody log thick with past signatures. Each name is a small testament. I tried. I was here. I held this for a while. Back in the city, the cold case lab feels almost futuristic compared to the small-town evidence room. Stainless steel tables, humming refrigerators, machines that whir and blink and process what the past left behind. The techs move with the quiet, precise confidence of people who know their tools have made monsters visible and sometimes, at long last, accountable. The cigarette becomes the focus. A gloved hand extracts it carefully, photographs first from every angle, measurements, notes. Then the careful scraping of the filter for skin cells, saliva, the tiny flecks of someone's existence, invisible but stubborn. The sample goes into a small labeled tube. From there into a machine that will pull apart the strands of DNA like threads, copying them, reading them, turning them into a numerical code as rigid and personal as a fingerprint. Rios watches through glass as the process begins. He knows better than to sit there the whole time. It's like watching water try to boil faster. So he goes back to his office and does what detectives have always done. He reads. The file is thick but methodical. Scene photos. Interview transcripts, maps with areas shaded in different colors from different years, marginal notes in at least 4 distinct handwritings. Halfway through, he finds the notation about the River Silt. He circles it in red. Beside it, he writes a question mark and the name of a state forensic geologist he knows from another case. Worth a call, worth retesting if there's any soil left. He finds the addendum about the anonymous water call, recovered years after the fact. The details are thin, smudged by time and human memory. Still, his pen drags a firm underline beneath the words, "Not everything in woods. Look in water." By the end of the day, the case has drawn a web across his whiteboard. Photos taped in place, arrows, times, a printout of the intersection camera still where the red Honda is just a blur passing under a wet sky. He steps back and studies it like he's looking at a painting hung crooked, trying to see what's off-center. That night, in his small apartment, he boots up his laptop and types Emily Carter, Oregon into a search bar. The old message boards are still there, buried beneath sleeker modern true crime sites and podcasts, threads that went quiet years ago, arguments that burned hot and then fizzled. A link to the website Jenna once built, long since updated into a cleaner layout but carrying the same raw plea between the lines. If you know something, say something. He reads until his eyes burn, skimming theories, filtering out the noise. One comment from 7 years back catches his attention. Someone claims they once drank in a bar off Highway 22 with a man who bragged, drunk and sloppy, about running deer and other things off the road back in the 90s. It's vague, secondhand, internet thin. The username is long gone, deactivated, but Rios prints it anyway. On a cold case, you learn not to dismiss anything that lingers in your head after you've closed the tab. 2 days later, the lab calls. "We've got something," the analyst says, voice steady but carrying a thread of excitement. Rios is in his car before the receiver hits the cradle. In the lab, the analyst pulls up a screen, lines of code, and peeks on a graph that mean everything to the right eyes. "Male DNA profile from the cigarette butt," she says. "Good quality, full profile. We've already run it through CODIS." CODIS, the national database. Millions of offender profiles, arrestees, forensic samples from unsolved scenes, all talking to each other in a silent, endless exchange. Rios feels his pulse pick up, a beat pounding in his throat. "And?" he asks. "No direct hit," she says. "Not in the main offender index. Whoever smoked that cigarette either never got convicted of a qualifying offense or their DNA was never taken." For a moment, disappointment brushes the edges of his relief. They have something, but not enough. Then the analyst clicks to another tab. "But," she continues, "we did get a partial in the relatives index." Rios frowns. "A familial match?" "Potentially," she nods. "We've got a profile in the system, collected from another case, a different crime scene, that shares a significant amount of genetic material with your cigarette donor. Not enough to be the same person. Too much to be a coincidence. Odds are we're looking at a close biological relative, sibling, parent, child." The graph on the screen suddenly looks like a family tree drawn in invisible ink. "What case?" Rios asks, voice low. The analyst pulls up the info. A case number, a different county, a different year, 2009. Assault. Possible attempted abduction of a young woman walking home late at night along a rural road 2 counties over from where Emily disappeared. The victim fought back hard enough to escape. The attacker fled. In the struggle, he left a smear of blood on her jacket. That blood gave them a DNA profile. It went into CODIS. No hit. The case went cold. Until now. Rios feels the world narrow to a point. "So you're telling me," he says slowly, "that whoever left that blood in 2009 is closely related to whoever stood near that ravine in 97 and smoked a cigarette?" "That's what the numbers say," she answers. "We'll refine the analysis, maybe target a probable relationship, but yeah, they're family. 2 cold cases, 12 years apart, 2 young women on dark roads in rural Oregon, one who came home, barely, one who never did. Connected by a thin, double helix thread of DNA and a cigarette butt that sat quietly in a box for more than a decade." Rios thanks her, walks out into the hallway, and leans back against the wall. For a moment, he lets the fluorescent hum wash over him. Then he pulls out his phone and dials the sheriff's office back in that little town off Highway 22. When Harris answers, Rios doesn't bother with small talk. "We've got movement," he says. "Not the answer, not yet, but a path." On the other end of the line, in a room where that thick case file has watched so many seasons turn, the sheriff closes his eyes. "What kind of path?" he asks. "The kind that leads to a family tree," Rios replies. "And maybe, finally, to whoever was on that road with Emily that night." Somewhere in a house that looks like any other, a man goes about his life, groceries, work, bills, the quiet, forgettable beats of an ordinary day. He has no idea that, thanks to a cigarette he barely remembers and a speck of blood his relative left on a stranger's jacket years later, the past is finally starting to turn its head in his direction. The 2009 file arrives on Rios's desk in a battered interoffice envelope that looks like it's already lived 3 lives. Different county, different sheriff's department, same smell of old paper and dried-out toner. The cover sheet is thin. Assault, female 21, rural road, night, suspect unknown, evidence collected, sent to state lab, no hits. Case status, inactive, pending new information. He flips it open. Her name is listed as Megan Hollis, college junior, home on a break, working nights at a roadside bar off a state highway that snakes through a landscape not all that different from Highway 22. She left her shift just after midnight, walked the short distance to where she'd parked under a broken streetlight. No cameras, no witnesses. The narrative is familiar before he's even reached the second paragraph, but this one ends differently. Megan made it home. He reads the officer's report of her statement. The language is clinical, the words squeezed into boxes on a form not built to hold terror. Victim reports hearing footsteps. Assailant attempted to drag victim toward tree line. Victim fought back. Assailant fled in unknown direction. Between those lines, in the spaces where official ink doesn't go, Rios can hear the ragged breath, the hands shaking so hard she could barely hold the pen. There are photos. A torn jacket, bruising on her arms and throat, a close-up of the smear of dark, dried blood on the back of her collar, the accident that would become the thread connecting that night to a cigarette butt 12 years and 2 counties away. The suspect description is frustratingly vague. Male, medium height, average build, dark clothing, gloved hands. A rough voice that might have been put on or might have been real. A chemical smell, maybe oil, maybe gasoline, maybe something else entirely. A face glimpsed in shadows, more impression than detail. Her brain, flooded with adrenaline, logged only fragments. A flash of stubble along a jawline, the shape of a nose, the low arc of a baseball cap. Enough to know he was human, not enough to put a sketch on TV. Rios looks up from the file, the pieces already shifting in his mind. 2 attacks, 12 years apart, different counties. Similar victim type, similar setting, similar method. Grab fast, drag off the road, use the darkness as a weapon. And now, the labs saying the blood from 09 and the cigarette from 97 speak the same genetic language. He closes the folder and reaches for the phone. Megan still lives in the state, the current address flagged in a recent database query. A small town, not far from where the attack happened. The number on file is 10 years old. Rios dials anyway. The phone rings long enough that he pictures it on a kitchen counter, vibrating next to a stack of bills and a grocery list. Then suddenly, a click. Hello? Her voice is older than the one in the transcript, but the underlying tension is the same. A wariness that never quite drains out. Ms. Hollis, he says. My name is Detective Mark Rios. I'm with the State Cold Case Unit. I'm calling about an incident that happened to you in 2009. There is a pause. He can hear the room on her end shift, the invisible weight of old memory dropping suddenly onto her shoulders. I told you people everything back then, she says finally. It was dark. He came up behind me. I fought. I don't remember his face. Not really. I tried. I did. I've read your statement, Rios replies gently. You did everything right. I'm not here to ask you to relive every second of that night. We've had some developments. Your case might be connected to another one older. I'd like to meet. Talk. On your terms, if that's something you can do. Another one, she repeats quietly. You mean someone else? He doesn't fill in the blank. Can we set a time? He asks. She hesitates again. It stretches long enough that he thinks she might hang up, tuck the pass back into the box she's clearly built for it. Then, there's a diner off the highway, the one with the big plastic rooster on the roof. Tomorrow, noon. I'll sit by the window. The diner is halfway between city and countryside, the kind of place where truckers and families collide in a swirl of coffee and pancakes. When Rios walks in the next day, the bell above the door jangles. The air smells like fryer oil and syrup. He spots her immediately. Megan is in her early 30s now, dark hair pulled back, a sweater with thumb holes worn smooth. She sits with her back to the wall, facing the door, a habit he recognizes from other survivors. You learn to keep your eyes on entrances and exits. You learn to sit where nothing can come up behind you. Detective, she says as he approaches. Not a question. She's been watching the parking lot. Ms. Hollis, he nods, sliding into the booth across from her. Thank you for meeting me. She wraps both hands around her coffee mug like it's something to hold on to. So, she says, voice tight, tell me why the state of Oregon suddenly remembers that some guy tried to drag me into the trees 16 years ago. He doesn't waste her time. There was a trace of his blood on your jacket, he says. You knew that already. It gave us a DNA profile back then, but there was no match in the system. That profile went into a database. It sat there. Last month we got a hit. Not on him. On a close relative from a different case. A cigarette butt found at the scene of a disappearance in 1997. A girl named Emily Carter. Recognition flickers in her eyes. She reaches into her bag, pulls out her phone, taps, turns it so the screen faces him. A web page glows there. A photo of a 17-year-old girl, the same shot from the posters. I know who she is, Megan says quietly. Missing girl from that little town off 22. My dad used to take that road for work. We'd see her picture at gas stations. They did a TV special about her when I was in high school. You're telling me? The man who grabbed me. We don't know that yet, Rio says carefully. But someone closely related to him was at the edge of the ravine where her car was found the night she disappeared, close enough to leave a cigarette on the ground. Blood doesn't lie, Ms. Hollis. Neither does DNA. The question now is, who is your guy, and who in his family was out there in 97? She leans back, the color draining slightly from her face. For a moment, the diner's noise, the clatter of dishes, the scrape of chairs, seems to recede around them. I don't remember his face, she says again, and he hears the frustration under the fear. I've tried for years. Therapy, hypnosis, nothing. It's just a shape, a shadow. Sometimes, Rio says, it's not about remembering every detail. It's about anything that doesn't fit. Smells, sounds, words. Did he say anything? Anything at all? She closes her eyes. Her fingers tighten around the mug. I heard gravel, she says slowly. His boots on gravel, like he came from behind the bar, not the road. And there was this smell, like motor oil and river mud. Wet, but not from the rain. I know that sounds stupid. It doesn't, he says. Anything else? Her eyes open. They're sharp now, cutting through her own fear. He said something stupid, she murmurs. Something that stuck because it made no sense. When I was fighting, he hissed in my ear, you don't want to end up like that other girl. I thought maybe he meant some other assault, some other town rumor. I was too busy trying not to die to ask follow-up questions. Rios feels the hair on his arms lift. Those were his exact words? He asks. Other girl? Yes. She looks away, staring out the window where cars slide past on the highway. I thought maybe I misheard. Sometimes in my head it turns into that first girl when I replay it. Maybe that's me filling in blanks. Maybe not. Either way, it means he wasn't new to this. He had a reference point. Past tense. Other. First. The language of a repeat offender, not a one-time explosion. Thank you, Rio says. The words feel insufficient, but they're all he has. If we can identify him, if we can bring charges, there's a chance your testimony could help. I won't ask you to decide that today. I just wanted you to know we haven't forgotten. That night isn't just a line in a file. She snorts softly. It hasn't been a line in my life either. On the drive back, his mind runs the new detail over and over. You don't want to end up like that other girl. Almost like a boast. Almost like a confession. He adds it to the whiteboard when he gets in. Under the red circle around 1997, he writes, offender aware of previous victim. Same offender, same family. The lab's next report lands 2 days later. The familial DNA analysis has gone deeper, cross-referencing public records, offender indexes, and a growing network of genealogical databases that people happily upload their genetic material into to find third cousins and long-lost great-grandparents. The ethics are messy, the legal lines are still being drawn, but in a state with no firm ban and a desperate need to close old cases, messy sometimes gives way to necessary. The report is dense, charts, percentages, probabilities. Somewhere halfway down the second page, the analyst has highlighted a paragraph. Based on the degree of shared alleles between the 1997 cigarette sample and the 2009 assault blood sample, we assess with high confidence that the two donors are related at a first-degree level, i.e., parent-child or full siblings. Cross-referencing genealogical data and regional population records suggests a likely paternal family line with historical residents in western and central Oregon. Beneath that, a list of names. Rios reads them twice, slow, letting each syllable settle into his memory. One surname appears more than any other, tangled through marriage records, property deeds, and arrest logs. A family spread across 3 counties, working class, blue-collar jobs, mechanic, logger, truck driver, heavy equipment operator, men who live on the road, in the woods, under cars, men who know the back ways and the side routes and the dark pockets of land nobody checks unless there's a reason. The last name hits him with a dull, heavy familiarity. He's seen it before, in a different file, in a different handwriting. He turns to the thick Carter file, flips back through the early suspect interviews. There it is, buried in a list of people questioned and released. A man with a blue Ford pickup and a short temper, Donnie Hales. Interviewed twice in '97. Once again in '01 after a drunk bar patron claimed Hales had bragged about messing with girls on the highway. No charges, no probable cause. Eventually the interviews stopped. Rios feels that sensation he's come to recognize as the case tilting, just slightly, onto a new axis. He pulls Hales's old interview transcripts. The man's answers are defensive, prickly. He'd been out with buddies the night Emily vanished. Fishing, drinking, no one could pin down times. One of the friends has since died. Another moved out of state. The motel clerk who half-heartedly supported their alibi barely remembered his own name when re-interviewed years later. It was all just soft enough to slip through the system. Now the genealogical chart tells a fuller story. Donald Hales, 63 now, former logger, truck owner, 2 adult sons in their 30s. Jake and Eli. Jake did a stint in county for a bar fight. Eli has a suspended license and a string of minor charges. Trespassing, disorderly conduct, 1 dismissed accusation of stalking he swore was blown out of proportion. Both grew up in the same region that cradles Highway 22 and the bar where Megan was grabbed in 2009. The lab can't yet say which Hales the DNA belongs to. The cigarette at Emily's scene could have been Donnie's, or one of his boys. The blood on Megan's jacket could be a son's, or a father's. The point isn't which branch yet. The point is the tree. He dials Harris again. You ever hear the name Hales in connection with Emily's case? Rios asks, though he already knows the answer. Donnie Hales, the sheriff replies immediately. I could say it in my sleep. You find him in that lab voodoo of yours? His family, Rios says. We've got a strong genealogical hit linking a male Hales to a cigarette butt from '97 and a close relative to an attempted abduction in '09. That second victim remembers her attacker mentioning that other girl. I don't think we're looking at separate storms anymore. I think we're looking at the same weather system. Silence hums on the line for a beat. Ooh. Hales still lives out on the old Mill Creek Road, Harris says finally. Double wide with 3 trucks in the yard. I drive past it twice a week. Never had enough to knock on his door with anything more than questions. He's the kind of man who turns those into a scene fast. You telling me we've got more than that now? We've got enough to ask a judge for warrants, Rios says. For DNA, for vehicles, for property, maybe more. If we find what I think we might. But we're not there yet. We move wrong. We spook him. He's had 28 years to get good at disappearing things. Things, Harris repeats, not people. He can't quite make himself say the other word. Rios stares at the names on the paper. Donnie, Jake, Eli. 3 points on a line that might stretch straight back to the ravine off Highway 22. We're going to have to go slow, he says. Quiet. Build this from the ground up. Genealogy, records, old friends, exes, co-workers. Anyone who's ever heard one of these men talk a little too freely after a few beers. We're not just chasing a ghost anymore, Sheriff. We're chasing a family. In a house on Mill Creek Road, a man drops onto a sagging couch, boots leaving faint prints on a cracked linoleum floor. The TV flickers. A crime show plays, actors pretending to be detectives, pretending to solve tidy murders in 42 minutes with commercial breaks. He watches for a while, snorts, and changes the channel. He doesn't know that, in a lab miles away, a strip of numbers has just reached up out of the past and pointed unerringly in his direction. He doesn't know that the cigarette he flicked away in the rain in 1997, the one that sank quietly into the mud near the place where a red Honda left the road, has finally started to speak. For nearly 3 decades, the story of Emily Carter has belonged to rumor, to grief, to the heavy silence of a file on a shelf. Now, piece by piece, the ground under that story is beginning to shift. The cold case is no longer just a question hanging in the air over a small Oregon town. It has a shape, a surname, a bloodline. And blood, once it starts to talk, is very hard to shut up. The Hales name doesn't sound like thunder when you say it out loud. It sounds ordinary, forgettable even. That's how it survives. Not as a headline, not as a legend, but as a series of small, unremarkable details threaded through the background of a place. A truck parked in the same yard for 20 years, a man paying cash at the hardware store, a family that minds its own business, just enough that nobody's sure what that business really is. Rio starts with paper. Property records, vehicle registrations, hunting licenses, employer files. The Hales family has been rooted in Western Oregon for decades, their address migrating in a slow, lurching pattern around logging towns and equipment yards. Donnie's name appears first in the early 80s, attached to a series of short-lived jobs: mill hand, choker setter, truck driver, then a back injury, a workers' comp claim, a note about reduced capacity. After that, his sons' names begin to show up in his place, filling the same roles, driving the same routes. The pattern is clear. Men who live where the pavement runs out, men who know every logging spur and old service road, who can back a trailer down a narrow dirt track in the dark without needing to think about it, men who are comfortable on the edge of nowhere. He pins a map to the wall and starts marking: here, the town where Emily disappeared; here, the turnout and ravine; here, the bar where Megan was grabbed; here, the Mill Creek address. Lines connect them, fat black marker slashes that start to look less like coincidence and more like a territory. Next, he digs into the interviews from '97. Donnie had denied everything then, of course. He'd sat across from a younger, less tired detective, arms folded, thick hands resting on faded flannel. Said he was out with buddies the night Emily vanished, drinking cheap beer and talking about the old days. Said he got home late and fell into bed. No, he'd never seen that Carter girl. No, he didn't know why people kept saying they'd seen his blue Ford cruising past the diner. People talk, people lie. He knew his rights. Back then, with no forensic link and a community just beginning to fracture under the weight of suspicion, gut feeling wasn't enough to hold him. Now Rios has more than a feeling. He builds the Hales family out from the middle, one person at a time. Ex-girlfriends, old co-workers, neighbors who stayed just far enough back to avoid trouble. Some numbers are disconnected, some people hang up, others talk, their voices hushed even over a phone line, like the name itself might carry consequences. Donnie, they say, was always quick to anger, quick to violence when drunk. He had a way of making people feel small, especially women. The kind of man who slapped a waitress on the hip and called it a joke, who backed his truck a little too close if a girl dared to roll her eyes. His sons learned from him. The same swagger, the same narrowed eyes, the same sense that the world owed them something. Jake bounced between jobs, always blaming someone else when he got fired. Eli drifted more. Temporary gigs, cash under the table, long stretches. Out in the woods, as he put it, cutting firewood for sale or running loads of scrap. There are whispers of something darker, girls who left parties early when he showed up, a co-worker who quit after catching him watching her a little too long in the break room. But none of it ever reached the level of charges that stuck. When that Carter girl went missing, one former neighbor says, I remember thinking, this feels like the kind of thing a man like Donnie'd be involved in. But you don't say that out loud. Not back then. Not when you've got kids and a front door that doesn't lock right. You just pull your curtains tighter. Rios takes it all down. Rumors aren't evidence, but they are smoke, and he's learned to pay attention to where smoke collects. He drives out to Mill Creek Road with Harris one overcast afternoon, not to knock on the door yet, but to see the lay of the land. The Hales property sits back from the road, gravel driveway bending around a stand of trees before revealing a sagging double-wide and a scatter of outbuildings that look like they've been assembled out of scrap and stubbornness. 3 trucks, as promised, an older blue Ford with rust chewing at the wheel wells, a newer white pickup with oversized tires, a battered red one listing slightly to the left. Still the same Ford? Rios asks. Same plate, Harris answers. State says it's been non-op twice, then registered again. Man like Donnie doesn't like parting with things that still move, even if they move badly. Rios watches the house from the passenger seat. A dog barks somewhere behind it, sharp and territorial. A curtain flickers in one window. He sees the silhouette of a man pause, look toward the road, then vanish deeper inside. Too early, Rios murmurs. We show up now. We're just reminding him we exist. Let him stay comfortable a little longer. Comfortable people make mistakes. They drive on, leaving the house in the rear view, but not out of mind. Back in the city, the genealogical analyst goes further. Using the Hales surname, property records, and a patchwork of family trees built by cousins and aunts looking for their roots, she narrows the likely branch. Donnie's grandfather lived near the banks of a wide, slow river that feeds into the network of creeks and streams running under Highway 22. Old-timers wrote about fishing there, swimming there, dumping things there when no one was looking. Rios rereads the note about river silt on the Honda's undercarriage, the anonymous call about looking in the water, Megan's mention of the smell of river mud on her attacker. A man raised around a river doesn't forget it, the analyst says when he stops by to thank her. It gets into your sense of direction, into how you think about hiding things. It's enough to pull him in a new direction. He calls in a favor from a friend in environmental services, gets access to old topographic maps and water flow charts from the late 90s. The landscape has changed since then, dams adjusted, banks eroded, floods carving new paths. But the skeleton of the system remains. He overlays the 1997 map on his current one, tracing the thick blue lines with his finger. If you were driving from Emily's town with something you needed to disappear, and you didn't trust the woods alone to keep your secret, you might head here, he thinks. Or here. Or here. He circles 3 points, all within plausible driving distance of the highway, all near places where an old-timer like Donnie could have fished as a boy, drunk as a young man, and learned exactly how the river swallows. Funding gets tight when you ask to drag a river for a girl who's officially listed as missing, not murdered. Rios knows this. So he doesn't start with a full-scale operation. He starts with a quiet, targeted survey, a side project, a test. He talks to a search and rescue coordinator he trusts, someone who's spent years reading water for what it hides. Together, they run sonar along one of the circled stretches, a midweek operation that draws no cameras, no press releases. Just a small boat, gray water, and the low hum of equipment. On the monitor, the riverbed appears in ghostly sweeps, pale ridges and darker hollows, logs, rocks, the occasional inexplicable shape that resolves on a second pass into trash. Tires. A shopping cart launched over a bridge by bored kids a decade ago. It's the third pass, near an abrupt drop-off, where the image flickers into something that makes the operator sit up straighter. Look at that, he mutters. See the line? That's not natural. Something long and straight sits half buried in silt, edges softened by time but stubbornly, unnaturally regular. Metal, maybe. A frame. The ghost of a box in the dark. Could be anything, the man says. Old appliance, piece of farm equipment, or a container, or a trunk, or a piece of a vehicle. Something heavy enough to sink, light enough to shift with floodwaters until it found its resting place. They mark the coordinates, take photos of the screen. For now, Rios logs it as a point of interest, not a discovery. There's a process. There are approvals. The river will still be there tomorrow. While the paperwork for a more focused dive crawl through the system, he turns back to more immediate human angles. If the Hales men have left fingerprints on anyone's life, it'll be in the people who drifted through their orbit and managed to escape. He tracks down an ex-girlfriend of Jake's, now living 3 towns over. They meet in the fluorescent gloom of a strip mall coffee shop, the soundtrack of espresso machines and tired pop songs. He was charming at first, she says, staring down at her cup, in that stupid bad boy way. Truck, boots, flannel, all that. Took me out on back roads, showed me viewpoints, rivers, thought it was romantic. Then he started getting weird about those places. Territorial, like the forest was his and I was just visiting. Weird how? Rios asks. He'd get mad if I mentioned them to anyone else, she says. Once I joked about bringing my cousin out to this fishing spot he showed me, and he grabbed my wrist so hard he left bruises. Said, "You don't bring people where they don't belong." I wrote it off as macho crap. Now, looking back, she shivers, pulls her sleeve down. He liked remote places, the kind where you could scream and nobody'd hear. I didn't think of it like that until after I left. Why did you leave? Rios asks, though he can guess. Because of what he said when that TV show about the missing girl came on, she answers. The one who vanished on that road, Emily. We were half watching it, eating pizza. I remember I said something like, "That's so sad," and he laughed. Not like it was funny, like he was remembering an inside joke, said, "Some girls just don't know when to stay home." I told him that was messed up. He shut up quick, tried to play it off. But there was this look in his eye, like he was someplace else. She bites her lip, eyes shiny now. I never told anyone that before. Felt like gossip. Like I was trying to make him into a monster because I was mad he scared me. But if you're asking about him now, after all this time, maybe I should have said it earlier. Rios thanks her, leaves her with a card. tells her she did the right thing by talking. His notebook is heavier than when he walked in, not with hard evidence maybe, but with tone, with context, with the way Jake's words line up, almost word for word, with the contempt he's seen in other predators when they talk about victims who don't know when to stay home. Piece by piece, the picture sharpens. Donnie, the patriarch, rooted in old sins, may be the one who taught his sons where the rivers run deepest. Jake, the brooding, bragging one, dangerous, in a direct, obvious way. Eli, quieter in the record, less remarked upon, but sometimes it's the quiet ones you have to watch hardest. The genealogical report doesn't care about personality. It only cares about alleles, shared markers, probabilities. Science says this family is tied to your scenes. Human behavior says, look closer, harder. It's enough to take to a judge. Not for an arrest warrant, not yet, but for something that might get them the last piece of the puzzle. A court-ordered collection of DNA from all three men, a direct comparison to the cigarette, to the blood, to whatever still lives in the evidence from 1997. The hearing is closed door, no cameras, just legal arguments stacked against years of silence. The defense attorney assigned to the Hales family on papers scoffs at the idea at first. You want to swab three men based on some cousin's family tree and a cigarette in a ditch from the last century. Rios' prosecutor, a woman who's built her career balancing on the thin line between what's allowed and what's right, doesn't flinch. We have a match between 2009's violent assault and 1997's missing persons scene, she says, a familial link, a pattern of behavior, statements placing these men in the path of both victims. This isn't a fishing expedition. It's a net that's already halfway around them. The judge, gray-haired and careful, reads the briefs, looks at the charts, thinks about being the one who either opens a door to the past or leaves it bolted. Finally, he signs. Limited scope, DNA samples only, no searches yet, no seizures, just cotton swabs, paper envelopes, and the weight of 28 years riding on a few skin cells collected from the inside of 3 cheeks. When Harris gets the call, he sits in his office for a long minute, staring at the phone like it might bite. We're really doing this, he says when Rios picks up, after all this time. We are, Rios answers. Tomorrow morning. I'll drive out. We'll do it together. Outside, the sky over the town is the color of old bruises, purple and gray pressed low over the trees. On Mill Creek Road, a dog barks once, then falls silent. In the Hales house, a television flickers, light stuttering across the unshaven jaw of a man who has no idea that the story he thought the river and the woods had swallowed is about to show up on his front porch with a warrant and a very simple question. Open your mouth. Morning comes down flat and colorless, the kind of washed-out light that makes everything look like an old photograph. Rios and Harris roll down Mill Creek Road in a marked cruiser, the car's heater humming low, neither man saying much. The warrant sits in a folder on Rios's lap, a neat stack of paper that feels heavier than it should, like it's soaked in all the years that led to this drive. The Hales property appears around the bend the way it always does, slow, inevitable, like a bad memory you've tried too hard to forget. The blue Ford squats by the side of the double wide like a tired animal. The white truck and the red one flank it, all three streaked with mud, windshield smeared, plates spattered and dull. A rusted washer lies tipped on its side near a shed. A plastic tricycle, sun-faded and cracked, leans against a post, the ghost of some other, more ordinary life. Harris kills the engine. For a moment, the only sound is the ticking of hot metal and a distant rhythmic thump from somewhere in the woods. Maybe a woodpecker, maybe something else. The dog starts up first, a hoarse, warning bark from behind the house, chain rattling in short, angry bursts. You ready? Harris asks. Been ready for 28 years, Rios says quietly, then opens the door. Gravel crunches under their boots as they walk up the drive, uniforms visible, badges catching what little light there is. Rios carries nothing but the folder and a small white evidence envelope, no guns drawn, no shouting, just the steady, deliberate approach of the past knocking on the present's front door. He raps his knuckles on the metal. The sound rings sharp in the cold air. For a few seconds, nothing. Then movement, a shadow crossing behind the thin curtain, a muttered voice, the slam of a door somewhere deeper inside. The knob clicks. The door opens halfway, chain still on. A face appears in the gap. Donnie Hales has the kind of age that doesn't show in neat lines, but in bulk. He's gone soft around the middle, shoulders still broad, neck thick, gray stubble caked along his jaw. His eyes are small and pale, set deep, the kind that look like they're always measuring how much trouble a thing might be. Sheriff, he says flat. Brought company, I see. Morning, Donnie, Harris answers. His tone is neutral, but there's a tightness at the edges. This is Detective Rios with the state. We've got a court order, Rios adds, lifting the folder slightly, to collect DNA samples from you and your boys. Donnie snorts, a short, contemptuous burst of air. You people still chasing that little ghost from 97? He says. Thought you'd moved on to bigger, shinier tragedies. This isn't a conversation, Donnie. It's a warrant, Harris says, the softness gone now. You want to look at it, you can. But at the end of this, we're walking away with 3 swabs and 3 signatures. The chain slides back with a reluctant clink. Donnie opens the door all the way, steps aside, and gestures them in with a theatrical sweep. Welcome to the palace, he mutters. Wipe your feet, or don't. Floor's seen worse. The living room smells like old smoke, fried food, and the faint sourness of spilled beer sunk into fabric. A faded couch slumps under the weight of a pile of laundry. The TV in the corner shows some daytime talk show with the volume turned low, faces flickering across the screen like ghosts. 2 younger men stand near the kitchen doorway. Jake is taller, shoulders hunched, jaw clenched, a faded ball cap pulled low, late 30s now, dark hair thinning at the temples. There's a restlessness to him, a coiled energy that has nowhere to go. Eli is leaner, quieter, leaning back against the counter, arms folded, gaze sliding between the officers and the floor. His eyes are hooded, harder to read. What's this about? Jake demands, even though he's heard every word. We ain't done nothing. Nobody said you did, Rios replies. We're here under court order to collect DNA. That's all. Swab the inside of your cheek, seal it, done. You cooperate, we're in and out. You don't, we come back with more paper and more people, and this gets ugly fast. Your call. Donnie barks out a laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. Typical, he says. State's got money for poking in people's mouths, but not for fixing a damn road. Fine. Swab away, but you're wasting your time. He says it like a man who's relied on time as his best alibi for nearly 3 decades. They start with him. Rios opens the small paper packet, holds up the sterile swab. Open, tilt your head back, he says. It's the same voice he'd use to talk someone through a breathalyzer. Routine, clinical. Donnie obliges, lips curling back in something that's not quite a smile. Rios slides the swab along the inside of his cheek, counts silently, withdraws it. The cotton tip looks unchanged, but it holds cells enough to speak volumes. He snaps it into the labeled tube, seals it, writes the date, time, initials. Chain of custody begins again, right here, in a living room that still has a scorch mark on the wall from some long-ago cigarette. Jake is next. He hesitates a fraction of a second longer than his father, eyes narrowed, chest rising and falling a bit faster. What happens if I say no? He asks. You get held in contempt of court, Harris says, and I get to put handcuffs on you for the first time instead of just thinking about it. They lock eyes. Whatever Jake sees there convinces him. He opens his mouth, jaw tense, jaw muscles jumping as the swab slides across. There's a nick on his lower lip, half-healed, as if someone's fist or a beer bottle found it not too long ago. When it's Eli's turn, the room feels different, quieter. Even the TV seems to hush itself. He steps forward without prompting, gaze flicking up to Rios' face and then away just as quickly. Up close, Rios can see faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the kind that come from squinting into weather more than laughing. Go on, Eli says softly. Let's get it over with. The swab moves. The tube clicks shut. 3 samples in a row, lined up in the envelope like bullets waiting to be fired in reverse, back through time, toward an unanswered question on a rainy night in 1997. As they wrap up, Jake can't help himself. This about that girl, he says. The one who was too stupid to stay off the road when it was piss and rain? The sentence slips out quick, like something he's said before. The room tightens around it. Harris turns his head slowly. You watch how you talk about her, he says, voice low. You forget, we knew her. She weren't some show on TV. Jake lifts his hands in mock surrender. Just saying. Some folks go looking for trouble. They find it. Eli cuts him a sharp look. It's small, gone in an instant, but Rios sees it. Annoyance, or warning. Rios doesn't bite. Not here, not now. He just closes the envelope carefully, tucks it back into the folder. You'll be hearing from us, he says. Can't wait, Donnie mutters. Back in the cruiser, the air feels clearer, but only just. You hear that? Rios asks as Harris pulls away. Too stupid to stay off the road? I heard it, Harris says. Sounded like his old man 30 years ago. Rios stares out the window, watching the Hales property shrink in the side mirror. 3 trucks, 3 men, one house that's seen more than it will ever admit. Let's see what their mouths just told us, he says. At the lab, the envelope goes into the system like any other piece of evidence, barcoded, logged, placed in a refrigerator that hums quietly alongside 100 other secrets. But for the people in the cold case unit, this one carries a different charge. The weight is measured not in days, but in cups of coffee, in the number of times Rios paces between his desk and the whiteboard, eyes dragging over the tangle of photos and lines and dates. Every time the phone rings, his hand goes to it a little faster. Every time it isn't the lab, his jaw tightens a shade more. When the call finally comes, the analyst doesn't bother with preamble. "We've got matches," she says, plural. Rios is on his feet before he realizes he's moved. "I'm listening." "You were right about the family," she continues. "The cigarette from '97, that one belongs to Donald Hales. Full match, no ambiguity. He stood at that ravine. He smoked there. Those cells are his." The room tilts, just slightly. The face in the doorway that morning, the laugh, the lines around his mouth, they all flicker over the image of a dark roadside in 1997, a red Honda half hidden, a girl who never made it home. "And the 2009 blood?" he asks, his throat a little tight. "That's where it gets interesting," the analyst says. "The blood from Megan's jacket matches not Donnie, but Eli. Again, full profile, no familial maybe, no statistical dance, it's him. Eli, the quieter one, the one who cooperated without argument, the one whose eyes wouldn't sit still." "So father at one scene, son at the other," Rios says slowly. "Looks that way. And we ran the sons against the cigarette too. Jake's a solid non-match. Eli shares half with Donnie, obviously, but not enough to confuse the profiles. That butt on the ground by the ravine, that's all Dad. A generational echo. One man standing at the edge of a crime in the late 90s, another trying to carve his own version in the late 2000s. Violence passed down like a bad heirloom. What about cross-checking them against anything else in CODIS, Rios asks, and any hits we didn't know were theirs? "Working on it," she says. "Couple of partials lighting up in other unsolveds, different counties, different years. I'll send you the list when we're confident. For now, you've got your links. 1997 scene to Donnie. 2009 assault to Eli. Science doesn't get much clearer." When he hangs up, the office feels too small. On the board, he draws 2 thick circles. One around Donnie's name, connected directly to a photo of Emily's car in the ravine. Another around Eli's, wired to Megan's file. Between them, he draws a heavy line. Bloodline, behavior, legacy. It's enough for more paper, not the simple clinical kind this time. The louder kind, search warrants. For the Hales property, for the trucks, for any outbuildings, for any land they own near the rivers. For old coolers, barrels, tarps, ropes, anything that can bind or drag or weigh down. For clothes, knives, guns, for trophies, if they're the kind of men who keep souvenirs of their cruelty. The prosecutor doesn't balk this time. "We've waited 28 years to knock down this door properly," she says. "We're not asking anymore, we're telling. Bring me an affidavit with every thread you've got, and I'll nail it to the judge's desk myself." Rios writes until his hand aches, laying out the story as cleanly and ruthlessly as he can. The night in '97, the car in the ravine, the cigarette, the long sleep in an evidence box, the 2009 assault, the blood, the DNA match, the genealogical tree spiraling inward until it lands squarely on the Hales name. The statements, the rumors, the offhand comments, the smell of river mud, the anonymous call that said not everything is in the woods. By the time he's done, the affidavit reads less like a dry legal document and more like an indictment with the ending redacted. The judge this time is not the cautious one from the DNA hearing. It's a woman who started her career as a prosecutor on domestic violence cases and never lost her taste for holding ugly men accountable. She reads. She asks a few sharp questions. She thinks about the town off Highway 22, about the mother who's kept her porch light on for almost 3 decades. Then she signs, her pen heavy on the paper. "Be thorough," she says. "And be careful. Men like this don't lay down easy when the past comes through their door." Word travels fast in a small department. By dawn the next day, a quiet convoy is forming behind the sheriff's office. Marked units, an unmarked van with crime scene techs, another with dive gear piled neatly inside, just in case they're ordered to go from land to water in the same breath. Vests thud against chests, radios crackle. Faces that have aged alongside the Carter file set in grim, determined lines. Harris stands in front of them, warrant in hand, the early light painting his breath in pale puffs. "This isn't a show," he says. "No sirens until we're off the main road. No lights unless we need them. This family's lived a long time thinking we can't touch them. Today, we disabuse them of that notion. We are looking for anything tied to the disappearance of Emily Carter and any other women these men might have hurt. You find something, you flag it. You don't pocket it, you don't move it unless the texts say so. We are not giving some defense lawyer the satisfaction of poking holes in this because we got sloppy. Rios listens, vest snug, badge clipped to his belt, a knot in his stomach that feels a lot like anticipation pressed against dread. He knows this isn't the end. Even with the DNA, even with the warrants, you don't get to write solved on a case this cold without bleeding for it. The engines rumble to life one by one. Gravel sprays as the convoy pulls out, turning toward Mill Creek Road, toward the blue Ford and the double wide and the man whose DNA sat in a cigarette filter at the edge of a ravine in 1997, waiting for the day someone would come back with the right questions. Somewhere beyond that, the river moves at its own patient pace, carrying silt and branches and maybe the last pieces of a story that never got its final line. Today, for the first time, it feels like the story is starting to write one.